Behind every fortune lies a secret, and behind this billionaire family, there's one so dark it could destroy them all. A father's sudden death, a husband's betrayal, a forged FBI agent, and a legacy poisoned from within. But nothing is ever what it seems. Keep watching, because the truth that surfaces in court will shatter every lie, and the person you least expect will be the final key to justice. If this story pulls you in, don't forget to like, leave a comment, share it with someone who loves a good twist, and subscribe for more stories that will keep you on edge. The sound of Marcus's Mont Blanc pen scratching across paper filled the silent courtroom. Each stroke felt like a blade across my skin, deliberate and cruel. He signed his name with a theatrical flourish, then slid the divorce papers across the mahogany table, his wedding ring catching the fluorescent light one last time. "Should have known better than to marry a Sterling," Marcus whispered, loud enough for everyone to hear. His legal team, 3 men in identical charcoal suits, chuckled like trained seals. "Tech wives don't belong in the rural world, Victoria." I sat alone on my side of the courtroom, my hands steady despite the trembling in my chest. No lawyer beside me. Marcus had made sure of that. Every attorney in the city suddenly had conflicts of interest or full caseloads when the Sterling name came up against Marcus Whitmore. Judge Patricia Coleman, a woman who looked like she'd seen every type of human cruelty in her 25 years on the bench, peered over her glasses. "Mrs. Sterling, do you have representation?" "I'll be representing myself, Your Honor," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. Marcus laughed outright then. Not a subtle chuckle, but a full, mocking laugh that echoed off the wood-paneled walls. This should be entertaining. 3 years ago, I would have shrunk at that laugh. 3 years ago, I believed Marcus Whitmore loved me. 3 years ago, my father was still alive, and I thought I understood what betrayal meant. I was wrong about everything. My name is Victoria Sterling, and I'm 38 years old. If you'd asked anyone in Silicon Valley 5 years ago, they would have told you I had it all. CEO of a successful tech startup, daughter of billionaire philanthropist Richard Sterling, and engaged to one of Wall Street's most successful hedge fund managers. The San Francisco Chronicle called us the power couple redefining American success. But newspapers only print what you let them see. The truth was different. The truth started at my father's funeral in the rain, with Marcus holding an umbrella over my head while sliding documents under my shaking hands. "Just routine papers, sweetheart," he'd said. "Nothing to worry about. Let me handle everything while you grieve." I signed them. I signed. Of course I signed them. My father's body was literally being lowered into the ground 50 feet away, and the man I loved was promising to take care of everything. That was my first mistake. It wouldn't be my last. Judge Coleman shuffled papers on her bench. "Mr. Whitmore, I see you're requesting immediate division of assets, including Mrs. Sterling's shares in next-gen technologies." "That's correct, Your Honor." Marcus's lead attorney, a shark named Harrison Blake, stood up. "My client has been more than generous in these proceedings. Mrs. Sterling's erratic behavior and mental instability following her father's death have made it impossible to continue the marriage." Mental instability. That's what they called it when I finally stood up for myself, when I finally said no to Marcus's demands, his control, his carefully orchestrated destruction of everything my father built. "Your Honor," I started to speak, but Marcus cut me off. "She's delusional," he said, turning to face the gallery where reporters scribbled notes. "She accused me of having affairs, of stealing money, of," he paused for dramatic effect, "of poisoning her father. Can you imagine? The woman needs help, not a divorce settlement." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. I could feel the reporters lean forward, smell the blood in the water. This is what Marcus did best. Perform for an audience, twist the narrative until the truth was unrecognizable. "Mr. Whitmore," Judge Coleman's voice was sharp, "you'll have your opportunity to speak when called upon." But the damage was done. I could see it in the way the bailiff looked at me with pity, the way Marcus's lawyers smiled like wolves who'd already divided up the sheep. What they didn't know, what Marcus couldn't have known, was that my father had seen this coming. Richard Sterling might have been dying during those final months, but his mind remained sharp as a surgical blade. And he'd left me more than just money and memories. He'd left me the truth. Your Honor, I said, standing despite my legs feeling like water. I'd like to submit evidence regarding the signed documents from my father's funeral. Evidence that shows they were signed under duress and false pretenses. Harrison Blake jumped up. Objection! Mrs. Sterling has provided no discovery of such evidence. This is clearly a desperate attempt to... The courtroom door opened with a bang. Everyone turned. James Whitfield walked in, my father's former business partner, carrying a sealed manila envelope that looked like it had been waiting decades to be opened. His face was grim, determined, and when his eyes met mine, I saw something that had been missing from my life for 2 years. Hope. The story of how I met Marcus Whitmore should have been a warning. It was at my father's charity gala for pediatric cancer research, the crown jewel of the Sterling Foundation's annual events. I was 29, fresh off my second successful product launch at NextGen, feeling invincible in a way only young success can make you feel. Marcus approached me at the bar, bourbon in hand, smile perfectly calibrated. You must be Richard Sterling's daughter, he said. I can see the intelligence in your eyes. Same as his. It was a line. I knew it was a line even then. But Marcus had a way of making even his manipulations feel like compliments. He was handsome in that Wall Street way. Sharp jaw, perfect hair, suits that cost more than most people's cars. But it was his confidence that drew me in, the way he moved through the world like he owned it. And you must be another hedge fund guy trying to get to my father through me, I replied, testing him. He laughed, genuine and surprised. Guilty on the hedge fund part, but your father, Richard Sterling, doesn't talk to guys like me. We're the vultures circling his empire, waiting for scraps. I'm here for the pediatric ward. My sister died of leukemia when she was 7. Later, I would learn Marcus never had a sister. But that night, with champagne bubbles rising like tiny prayers and my father smiling at me from across the room, I believed him. I believed everything. Our courtship was a whirlwind that the society pages loved. Marcus at my product launches, me at his firm's galas, both of us in the Time Style section, wearing matching Rolexes. My father was cautiously optimistic at first. He's ambitious, Richard said over dinner one night, Marcus charming my mother in the next room. Maybe too ambitious. Like you weren't at his age? I challenged, and my father smiled. I suppose you're right, but Victoria promised me something. Never sign anything without reading it. Never give anyone control over what we've built, not even for love. I promised. Another promise I would break. The wedding was everything a Sterling wedding should be. 500 guests at the St. Regis, flowers flown in from Holland, a string quartet playing Vivaldi. My father walked me down the aisle despite his shortness of breath, despite the heart medication he'd started taking 6 months earlier. In photos from that day, you can see it if you look closely. The slight gray pallor to his skin, the way he gripped my arm, not just with love, but for support. Marcus had started bringing my father tea every Sunday during our family dinners. For your health, Richard, he'd say. Green tea with honey. My grandmother swears by it. My father drank every cup. The first year of marriage was perfect in that surface way that makes for good Instagram posts. Marcus and I in Santorini, Marcus and I at Warren Buffett's charity auction, Marcus and I renovating our Tribeca penthouse. But underneath, fault lines were forming. It started with small things. Marcus questioning my decisions at NextGen. Are you sure that's the right direction? Maybe you should consult someone with more experience. Then bigger things. You're working too many hours. It's not good for our image. Then fundamental things. Your father's getting older, Victoria. Maybe it's time to start thinking about who should really be running the Sterling Foundation. The night everything changed was a Thursday in October, 2 years into our marriage. I'd come home early from a conference, excited to surprise Marcus with tickets to Hamilton. Instead, I found him in our bed with a woman I'd never seen before, her red hair spread across my grandmother's pillowcase. They weren't even subtle about it. Her clothes were strewn from the front door to the bedroom like breadcrumbs in a fairy tale. Marcus's wedding ring sat on the nightstand, abandoned. Victoria, he said, not even startled, you're home early. The woman, Sarah Collins, I'd later learn, had the decency to look embarrassed. She grabbed a sheet, started to say something, but Marcus held up a hand to silence her. Don't, he said to her, but his eyes never left mine. Victoria understands how the world works, don't you, darling? I stood in the doorway of my own bedroom, in the home I'd paid for with my trust fund, and realized I was looking at a stranger. This wasn't the man who'd quoted Pablo Neruda at our wedding. This was someone who'd worn that man like a costume, and now, finally, was taking it off. Get out, I said, surprised by how steady my voice was. Marcus laughed. This is my home too, Victoria. Community property, remember? Though I suppose you were too emotional at your father's funeral to remember what you signed. My father's funeral, 3 months earlier. The worst day of my life, when I'd stood in the rain watching them lower the man who'd taught me everything into the ground. Marcus had handled all the arrangements, all the paperwork, all the details I was too destroyed to face. What did I sign? My voice was no longer steady. Marcus stood up, completely naked, completely unashamed. Documents that make me a full partner in everything, darling. Your company, your inheritance, your future. Till death do us part, remember? Or until I decide otherwise. That night, I drove to my childhood home in Westchester, the empty mansion echoing with memories. I sat in my father's study, surrounded by his books and the lingering scent of his pipe tobacco, and cried until I couldn't breathe. Then I called Elena Rodriguez, my college roommate and the only person I trusted completely. Pack a bag, she said immediately. You're staying with me. And Victoria, we're going to destroy him. I believed her, but I had no idea how much I would lose before that destruction was complete. Elena's apartment in Brooklyn was a far cry from my Tribeca penthouse, but it felt more like home than anywhere I'd been in years. She made coffee while I sat at her kitchen table, divorce papers spread out like a map of my mistakes. Walk me through exactly what happened at the funeral, Elena said, her forensic accountant mind already working. She'd traded her corporate wardrobe for Columbia law sweats, but her eyes were sharp as surgical instruments. I closed my eyes, remembering that gray March day. Dad's funeral was on a Tuesday. It rained the entire time. Marcus handled everything, the funeral home, the cemetery, the reception. I was barely functional. And the papers? He said they were routine. Insurance documents, transfer papers for the foundation, things that couldn't wait. He had them in a leather folder, very official. I signed maybe 7 or 8 documents. Elena pulled her laptop closer. Did you keep copies? Marcus said he filed them with the attorneys. She typed rapidly, pulling up legal databases. Victoria, I need you to think. Did any of those papers have next-gen letterhead? My stomach dropped. Yes, at least 2 did. And you didn't read them? My father was being buried, Elena. I could barely see through the tears. She reached across the table, squeezing my hand. Hey, this isn't your fault. Grief is not a character flaw. Marcus taking advantage of that grief? That's the crime here. We spent the next 3 days going through every document we could find. Elena discovered discrepancies immediately. Transfers that didn't match. Signatures that seemed off. Timelines that didn't make sense. But the smoking gun came when she hacked into Marcus's email. Victoria, she said, her face pale. You need to see this. The email was from Marcus to his father, David Sterling, dated 2 weeks before my father's death. Dad, Richard's heart is failing faster than expected. The medication adjustments are working. V will be too destroyed to read anything carefully. We'll have full control within 6 months. I read it 3 times before the words made sense. He was poisoning my father. We need to go to the police, Elena said immediately. But when we tried, we hit wall after wall. Detective Morrison, a friend of my father's, looked genuinely pained. Without concrete evidence, this is just speculation. Marcus's father has connections everywhere. You need more than an email. More, always more evidence, more proof, more documentation of what I already knew in my bones. That Marcus had killed my father and stolen everything. The divorce filing was supposed to be my declaration of war. Instead, it became Marcus's stage. He played the victim perfectly. There he was in the New York Post, looking haggard outside his office. Local financier betrayed by unstable wife. Page 6 ran photos of him at charity events, alone, dignified in his suffering. Meanwhile, my phone buzzed with messages from former friends asking if I was okay, if I was getting help, if the rumors about my breakdown were true. He's controlling the narrative, Elena said, showing me her laptop. Look at this. A video had gone viral. Security footage from Marcus's office building, edited to show me arriving but not leaving. The caption, Mrs. Sterling spotted breaking into husband's office. Mental health crisis deepens. I hadn't broken in. I'd used my key, the one I'd had for years. But context didn't matter anymore. The story was already written. That's when the first real blow came. Harrison Blake, Marcus's attorney, arrived at Elena's apartment with a court order. Mrs. Sterling, your assets have been frozen pending psychiatric evaluation. Mr. Whitmore is concerned about your erratic behavior and potential danger to yourself and others. This is insane, Elena protested. Blake smiled coldly. No, Ms. Rodriguez. What's insane is Mrs. Sterling's continued harassment of my client. The restraining order is just a formality at this point. After he left, I sat in Elena's bathroom staring at myself in the mirror. The woman looking back was thin, hollow-eyed, defeated. This was what Marcus wanted, to break me so completely that no one would believe anything I said. No, I said to my reflection. Not today. I called James Whitfield, my father's former business partner. He answered on the first ring. Victoria, I've been waiting for your call, he said. Your father left something with me, something Marcus doesn't know exists, but we need to be careful, very careful. What is it? Proof, James said simply. Proof of everything, but Victoria, if Marcus finds out about this before we were ready, he'll destroy us both. That night, Elena and I made a plan. If Marcus wanted to play dirty, we would play dirtier. If he wanted to destroy my reputation, we would destroy his empire. But first, we needed to know exactly who we were fighting. Sarah Collins, the woman from my bed, reached out through Instagram. Her message was short. I know things about Marcus, things that could help you, but I need protection. It could be a trap. Marcus was certainly capable of it, but I was running out of options and time. Set up the meeting, I told Elena, but we do it my way. The war for my father's legacy was about to begin in earnest. What I didn't know was that Marcus had been planning this war long before he ever met me. The Sterling name meant something to him beyond money or status. It meant revenge. Sarah Collins looked nothing like the confident woman I'd found in my bed 6 months ago. She sat across from me in a diner in Queens, hands wrapped around a coffee cup like it might protect her, dark circles under her eyes telling a story of sleepless nights. I didn't know who you were at first, she began, her voice barely above a whisper. Marcus told me you were separated, that the divorce was just a formality. I was his analyst at the firm, working 60-hour weeks, and he was attentive. Elena sat beside me, recording everything on her phone. When did you realize something was wrong? The night Victoria found us wasn't supposed to happen. Marcus had promised me you were in San Francisco for the week. But earlier that day, I'd seen something on his computer. Financial transfers. Hundreds of them, all from Sterling Foundation accounts. My heart raced. You have proof? Sarah pulled out a flash drive, sliding it across the table like contraband. Screenshots, transfer records, emails. But there's more. Marcus isn't just stealing money. He's been funneling it to offshore accounts linked to criminal organizations. Money laundering on a massive scale. Why am I asked. He already had wealth. Why risk everything? Sarah looked at me with something like pity. You really don't know, do you, about his father, about what Richard Sterling did to the Whitmore family? I shook my head and Sarah continued. 25 years ago, your father and David Whitmore were business partners. They built Sterling Whitmore Enterprises together. But your father discovered David was embezzling, cooking the books. Richard didn't just fire him, he destroyed him. Criminal prosecution, public humiliation, complete financial ruin. David lost everything except his Senate seat, and even that was damaged. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. So Marcus married me for revenge. He married you to take back what he believes belongs to his family. Every Sunday dinner, every family gathering, every moment of your marriage was calculated. He even... Sarah stopped, looking sick. What? The tea, He talked about the tea constantly, said it was the perfect slow poison, undetectable if done right, mimics natural heart failure. Elena grabbed my hand as the room spun. My father's medications, his declining health, Marcus's constant attention to his tea ritual. Murder, planned and executed over months while I smiled and passed the sugar. I need to call Detective Morrison, I said, standing. Wait, Sarah grabbed my wrist. There's someone else involved, someone inside the FBI. I've been talking to them wearing a wire to meetings with Marcus. But Victoria, I don't know if I can trust them completely. This goes deeper than just Marcus. That's when my phone rang. The caller ID showed my nephew Jason's school. Mrs. Sterling, this is Principal Garrett. There's been an incident. Jason has been arrested. They found drugs in his locker. The room tilted. Jason was 16, straight A student, the kid I'd raised since my sister's overdose 8 years ago. He didn't even drink coffee, let alone do drugs. This is Marcus, I said, already moving toward the door. Elena followed, but Sarah held back. Victoria, be careful. Marcus knows we're meeting. This could be a trap. But I didn't care. Jason needed me. The police precinct was chaos. Parents shouting, lawyers arguing, and in the middle of it all, my nephew in handcuffs, looking smaller than his 16 years. Aunt Vic, he said when he saw me, tears streaming down his face. I didn't do it. I swear I didn't. I know, baby, I know. The detective, a young guy who looked fresh out of the academy, pulled me aside. Ma'am, we found enough cocaine in his locker to charge him with intent to distribute. That's serious time. This is a setup, I said. My soon-to-be ex-husband. Ma'am, I understand divorce can be contentious, but these are serious accusations. I wanted to scream. Everyone looked at me like I was the crazy ex-wife, the woman scorned, the unreliable narrator of my own life. Meanwhile, Marcus was systematically destroying everyone I loved. Elena worked her magic, calling in favors, and got Jason released on bail. But as we walked to the car, he pulled out his phone. Aunt Vic, I need to show you something. I've been recording things at school. Marcus has been meeting with some men in the parking lot. I thought if I could get evidence. Jason, no, this is dangerous. I already did it. He handed me his phone. Look at yesterday's recording. The video was grainy but clear enough. Marcus in the school parking lot, handing a package to someone. The same someone who, hours later, would be seen on security footage near Jason's locker. This is it, Elena breathed. This is evidence of the setup. But when we tried to pull up the video again, it was gone. The phone had been remotely wiped. He's watching us, I said, the paranoia finally making sense. He's been watching everything. That night, back at Elena's apartment, we found it ransacked. Everything electronic was gone. Laptops, phones, even Elena's backup drives. But they'd missed one thing. The flash drive Sarah had given us, hidden inside a tampon box in the bathroom. We need to disappear, Elena said. Go to the FBI directly. But I was done running, done hiding, done being the victim in Marcus's carefully orchestrated tragedy. No, I said. We're going to court tomorrow, the divorce hearing, and we're going to destroy him in front of everyone. Elena looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Victoria, he's taken everything. You don't even have a lawyer. Then I'll represent myself. It was a desperate move, possibly stupid, definitely dangerous. But I was tired of playing defense. My father had taught me chess when I was 7 years old, and the first lesson was always the same. Sometimes the best defense is an unexpected offense. Marcus wanted to break me in that courtroom. Instead, I was going to break him. What I didn't know was that James Whitfield would be there with my father's final move. A checkmate 25 years in the making. The morning of the hearing, I woke up to a nightmare. My face was everywhere. CNN, Fox, MSNBC, even the local morning shows. But it wasn't my face exactly. It was a deep-fake video, explicit and devastating, with my head expertly mapped onto another woman's body. CEO's daughter in compromising video scandal scrolled across the screen. Elena stood in her kitchen, phone in hand, face white with rage. It's everywhere. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. The hashtags are already trending. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. This was beyond character assassination. This was complete annihilation. My phone exploded with notifications. Former colleagues, distant relatives, Everyone had seen it. The video was sophisticated enough that even I had a moment of doubt. Had I done something? Been drugged? The confusion was part of the weapon. "We can prove it's fake," Elena said. But we both knew the truth. By the time we proved anything, the damage would be permanent. The internet never forgets. 2 hours before court, Jason called from a friend's phone. "Aunt Vic, Child Services is here. They're saying you're unfit, that the video proves you can't take care of me." I could hear voices in the background, official and cold. "Jason, listen to me. Go with them. Don't fight. I'm going to fix this." "How?" His voice broke. "How can you fix this?" I didn't have an answer. Elena drove me to the courthouse through a gauntlet of reporters. Their questions hit like physical blows. "Victoria, is the video real? Are you seeking psychiatric help? How does it feel to lose everything?" Inside the courtroom, Marcus sat with his team of lawyers, impeccable in his Navy suit, wearing the watch my father had given him. When our eyes met, he winked. Judge Patricia Coleman entered, her face unreadable. The gallery was packed. Reporters, curiosity seekers, and in the back, James Whitfield, holding that manila envelope like a lifeline. "Mrs. Sterling," Judge Coleman began, "I see you're representing yourself." "Yes, Your Honor." Harrison Blake stood immediately. "Your Honor, given this morning's revelations and Mrs. Sterling's obvious mental state, we move for immediate summary judgment. She's clearly unfit to handle any financial responsibilities." The judge looked at me over her glasses. "Mrs. Sterling, do you have anything to say?" This was it, my moment. I stood, legs shaking but voice clear. "Your Honor, I'd like to present evidence that the video released this morning is a deepfake, created by my husband as part of a systematic campaign to destroy my credibility." "Objection," Blake shouted. "No such evidence has been submitted." "Because my husband had my attorney's office ransacked and our computers destroyed," I continued. "Just as he planted drugs in my nephew's locker. Just as he's been stealing from the Sterling Foundation for years." Marcus laughed, loud and performative. "Your Honor, she's delusional. This is exactly the behavior we've been documenting." "I have proof," I said, pulling out Sarah's flash drive. "Financial records showing the obtained illegally," Blake interrupted. "That's stolen property from Mr. Whitmore's private files." Judge Coleman raised her hand for silence. "Mrs. Sterling, do you have any legally obtained evidence?" This was the trap. Marcus had made sure every piece of evidence I had was tainted, stolen, or inadmissible. I could see it in his eyes, the satisfaction of a man watching his prey realize the cage has no exit. But then I remembered something. "Your Honor, I'd like to call my husband to the stand." "This is a divorce hearing, not a trial," Blake protested. "If Mr. Whitmore has nothing to hide, he should have no problem answering a few questions under oath," I said, looking directly at Marcus, "unless he's afraid of perjury charges." It was a gambit. Marcus's ego was his weakness. He couldn't resist a performance, especially with media watching. Judge Coleman considered. "Mr. Whitmore, you're not required to testify, but if you choose to..." Marcus stood, straightening at his tie. "I have nothing to hide, Your Honor, unlike my wife." He took the stand with the confidence of a man who'd never lost anything that mattered. I approached slowly, Sarah's flash drive in my pocket, my phone recording in my other pocket, a recording I'd started the moment I walked into the courthouse. "Mr. Whitmore," I began, "you manage a hedge fund worth approximately $2 billion, correct?" $2.3 billion, he corrected, unable to resist the brag. "And you're familiar with financial regulations regarding money laundering?" Blake stood. "Relevance?" "I'm establishing expertise, Your Honor." "I'll allow it." Marcus leaned back. "Of course I'm familiar with the regulations. It's my job." "Then you'd recognize laundered money if you saw it?" "Naturally." I pulled out a paper, not from the flash drive, but from my own memory. "Can you explain why $300,000 was transferred from the Sterling Foundation to an account in the Cayman Islands on March 15th? Marcus's smile flickered. "I don't recall that specific transaction." "The same day as my father's funeral?" "Coincidence." "And the $500,000 were transferred to a Swiss account on March 20th? "You're making things up." "Am I?" I turned to Judge Coleman. Your Honor, I may not have admissible documents, but Mr. Whitmore just testified under oath that these transactions don't exist. If they do exist, that's perjury. The courtroom stirred. Marcus's lawyers whispered frantically. Additionally, I continued, Mr. Whitmore testified he's familiar with money laundering regulations. If these transactions exist and he knew about them, that's conspiracy to commit fraud. Marcus's face reddened. You can't prove anything. Actually, a voice called from the gallery, she can. James Whitfield stood, holding up the manila envelope. Your Honor, I have here a notarized addendum to Richard Sterling's will, along with financial records he compiled before his death. Records that show systematic theft from the Sterling Foundation. Blake erupted. This is ambush testimony. This is... But Judge Coleman was already motioning for the bailiff to retrieve the envelope. As she opened it, her expression changed from skepticism to shock. Mr. Whitmore, she said slowly, would you like to reconsider your testimony? Marcus gripped the witness stand, knuckles white. For the first time since I'd known him, he had no words. Your Honor, James Whitfield said, stepping forward, I need to provide context for these documents. Richard Sterling was my best friend and business partner for 30 years. In his final months, he came to me with suspicions about his son-in-law. Judge Coleman nodded for him to continue while Marcus's lawyers huddled in heated discussion. Richard had noticed discrepancies in the foundation's accounts, small at first, then larger. He also noticed his health declining in ways that didn't match his diagnosed condition. He asked me to investigate quietly. This is hearsay, Blake objected. It's testimony about documents properly submitted to the court, Judge Coleman replied curtly. Continue, Mr. Whitfield. James pulled out a tablet. Richard installed security cameras in his home office without telling anyone. He also started recording his Sunday dinners. Your Honor, I have video evidence of Mr. Whitmore adding substances to Richard's tea. The courtroom erupted. Reporters typed furiously on their phones. Marcus shot to his feet. That's a lie! This is fabricated! But I was already moving. While everyone focused on James, I pulled out my phone, connecting it to the courtroom's audio system, a feature I knew about from my father's charity events held here. Your Honor, I said, I have one more piece of evidence, a recording from last night. Before anyone could object, I hit play. My voice came through the speakers, slurred, playing drunk. Marcus, why? Why did you do it? Then Marcus, clear and cruel. Because your father destroyed mine. Because Sterlings think they're so perfect, so untouchable. Do you know what it was like growing up as David Whitmore's son? The scandal? The shame? Your father took everything from us. So you killed him? Marcus's recorded laugh was chilling. Killed is such a harsh word. I adjusted his medication. Increased the dosage gradually. His heart was already weak. Nature just needed a little help. And the money? My inheritance, my family's inheritance. Every cent your father stole, I took back, plus interest. The recording continued, but Judge Coleman had heard enough. She stood, her face granite. Bailiff, please detain Mr. Whitmore. This court is immediately recessing while I contact the district attorney's office. Marcus lunged toward me, but the bailiff was faster. As they grabbed him, he screamed, You set me up! You were recording me? You taught me well, Marcus, I said quietly. Always have leverage. But the day's revelations weren't over. As Marcus was being handcuffed, Sarah Collins entered the courtroom, flanked by two people in FBI windbreakers. Agent Sarah Collins, she announced, showing her badge. We've been investigating Mr. Whitmore for 18 months. The affair was my cover. My legs nearly gave out. You're FBI? I'm sorry for the deception, Mrs. Sterling. We needed someone inside his organization. When I learned you were filing for divorce, we knew it was time to move. Marcus looked at Sarah with pure hatred. You lying. Mr. Whitmore, Agent Collins interrupted, you're under arrest for money laundering, fraud, and conspiracy to commit murder. You have the right to remain silent. But Marcus had one more card to play. As they dragged him toward the door, he shouted, Ask my father, Senator Whitmore, about the Sterling fortune. Ask him about the original theft. Then the doors closed, and he was gone. The courtroom slowly emptied, But I remained seated, overwhelmed. Elena rushed to my side, tears streaming down her face. You did it. Victoria, you actually did it. But Judge Coleman wasn't finished. She returned to the bench, gavel in hand. Mrs. Sterling, in light of today's evidence, I'm granting you an emergency injunction. All assets are immediately unfrozen and returned to your control. Additionally, any transfers made by Mr. Whitmore from Sterling accounts are reversed pending criminal investigation. She paused, looking at me with something like respect. Your father would be proud. As we left the courthouse, the media frenzy was different. The questions had changed. Victoria, how long have you been working with the FBI? Will you be pressing charges? What's next for the Sterling Foundation? But I only had one destination in mind, Jason. My nephew needed to know he was safe, that it was over. The drive to the Child Services office was surreal. Elena fielded calls from lawyers, board members, even a few senators expressing their support. Amazing how quickly the tide turns when you're winning. Jason was in the waiting room, still in yesterday's clothes, looking lost. When he saw me, he ran into my arms. Is it over? He whispered. Almost, I said, holding him tight. Almost, because Marcus's words echoed in my mind. His father, Senator David Whitmore, was still out there. And if Marcus had learned his cruelty from anyone, it was from the man who'd raised him with revenge in his heart. The war wasn't over, but for the first time in 2 years, I wasn't fighting it alone. 3 days after Marcus's arrest, Senator David Whitmore requested a meeting. The message came through official channels, formal and cold. Miss Sterling, I believe we should discuss our family's futures. Elena advised against it. The FBI warned it could be dangerous, but I needed to face the man who'd orchestrated my father's murder, even if his son had carried it out. We met at the Union Club, that bastion of old money and older secrets where my father had once been a member. David Whitmore looked like Marcus, aged 30 years, same sharp features, same calculating eyes, but with an added weight of decades of bitterness. Victoria, he said, not offering his hand, you look like your mother. Senator Whitmore. We sat in leather chairs that had probably hosted robber barons and railroad tycoons. The irony wasn't lost on me, discussing crime in a room built by criminals who'd simply been born in the right century. My son is looking at life in prison, he said, swirling bourbon in his glass. Your son murdered my father. Your father destroyed my life first. His voice was calm, conversational, as if we were discussing the weather. Did you know Richard and I started Sterling Whitmore Enterprises in a garage? 2 kids with big dreams. I was the numbers guy. He was the vision. It worked perfectly until he decided I was expendable. You were embezzling. David laughed bitterly. I was surviving. Your father paid himself 3 times what I made despite our equal partnership. So yes, I balanced the scales. And for that, he destroyed me. Criminal charges, public humiliation, and my wife left me, took our daughter. Marcus grew up in that shadow. So you raised him to be a weapon. I raised him to reclaim what was ours. David leaned forward. But you're right, I went too far. Marcus went too far. The question now is whether you want to continue this war. The war's over. Marcus is going to prison. Is it? David pulled out his phone, showing me a photograph. It was Elena entering her apartment building, a red laser dot visible on her back. One call, Victoria. One call and your friend has an accident. Your nephew relapses into drugs. Real ones this time. Your mother's nursing home has a tragic fire. My blood turned to ice. You're threatening. I'm negotiating. Here's my offer. Marcus pleads guilty to financial crimes only. No murder charges. He serves 10 years maximum. In exchange, you get your life back. Your loved ones stay safe. The Sterling Foundation continues its work. And if I refuse? Then we both burn. Mutually assured destruction. Very Cold War, but effective. I stood to leave, but his next words stopped me. There's something else. Something your father never told you. Check the Sterling Foundation's original incorporation documents. Check who the third partner was. I left without agreeing to anything, but David's threat hung over me like a guillotine. That night, I pulled the Foundation's original papers from my father's files. There were 3 signatures. Richard Sterling, David Whitmore, and Patricia Coleman. Patricia Coleman. Now Judge Patricia Coleman. The next morning I confronted her in her chambers. She was expecting me. I wondered when you'd find out, she said, removing her reading glasses. Sit down, Victoria. You deserve the truth. You were business partners with my father? Before I was a judge, I was a corporate lawyer. Your father and David came to me to incorporate their company. I invested my life savings, $50,000. It doesn't sound like much now, but in 1998, it was everything I had. What happened? Patricia's face hardened. David happened. He wasn't just embezzling. He was setting up your father to take the fall. When I discovered it, I had a choice. Side with David and get rich, or side with Richard and do what was right. You chose my father. I chose justice. It cost me my investment, nearly my career. David had connections even then. But your father protected me, helped me get appointed to the bench. I owe him everything. Did you know about Marcus's plan? She shook her head. Not until that day in court. But Victoria, I need to tell you something. Your father knew he was dying, not from natural causes. He'd figured out what Marcus was doing. He came to me 2 weeks before his death with those documents James brought to court. He made me promise to wait, to let you fight your own battle first. Why? Because he said you needed to know your own strength, that defeating Marcus yourself was the only way you'd heal. I thought about all the pain, the humiliation, the losses I'd endured. He let himself die for a lesson? He was dying anyway. The poison had done too much damage, but he used his last weeks to set up Marcus's downfall. Every document, every recording, every piece of evidence, Richard orchestrated it all. I sat in stunned silence, processing this final manipulation from beyond the grave. My father, even in death, moving pieces on the chessboard. There's more, Patricia continued. David Whitmore's threats aren't idle, but the FBI has been monitoring him since Marcus's arrest. If you agree to wear a wire, we can catch him attempting to obstruct justice. You want me to be bait. I want you to be brave. One more time. That evening I met David again, this time in Central Park. FBI agents posed as joggers, dog walkers, young couples on benches. I wore a wire taped to my ribs, its presence both reassuring and terrifying. Have you considered my offer? David asked, feeding pigeons like a grandfather, not a monster. I have a counter offer, I said. You leave my family alone, and I won't release the recording I have of you from 1998. He froze. What recording? The one where you detail your plan to frame my father. The one Patricia Coleman secretly made when you tried to recruit her. It was a bluff. No such recording existed. But David didn't know that. You're lying. Am I? Why do you think Patricia sided with my father? She had insurance. David's mask finally cracked. That sanctimonious, she recorded me? Every word, including the part where you discuss killing my father if necessary. I was young, angry. You were planning murder, just like your son. David stood, agitated. If that recording surfaces, I'll destroy everyone you love. Elena, Jason, your mother. Is that a threat, Senator? It's a promise. I have men ready. One word from me and FBI. Nobody move. Agents swarmed from every direction. David looked at me with dawning realization. You're wearing a wire. Like father, like daughter, I said. My dad taught me to always have leverage. As they arrested him, David laughed, a broken, defeated sound. Your father would be proud. He always said you were the best thing he ever created. No, I corrected. I'm the best thing that survived him. The trial of Marcus Whitmore became the most watched court proceeding since the O.J. Simpson case. Court TV streamed it live. Nancy Grace dedicated entire episodes to analyzing my testimony. The hashtag Justice for Victoria trended globally. I sat in the witness stand for 3 days, recounting everything. The marriage, the manipulation, the slow poisoning of my father. Marcus watched me with dead eyes, his orange jumpsuit a far cry from his designer suits. Mrs. Sterling, the prosecutor asked, when did you first suspect your husband was poisoning your father? I didn't suspect anything until after Dad died. Marcus was so attentive, so caring. He brought Dad tea every Sunday, adjusted his medications when Dad forgot, even drove him to doctor's appointments. What changed your perception? I looked directly at Marcus. Sarah Collins told me about the tea, about Marcus's obsession with slow-acting poisons. Then I remembered something Dad said near the end. The tea tastes different lately. I thought he was losing his sense of taste. Now I know he was tasting his own murder. Marcus's defense attorney, a shark named Catherine Walsh, tried to destroy me on cross-examination. Mrs. Sterling, isn't it true you have been diagnosed with anxiety and depression? Yes, after discovering my husband murdered my father. You were taking Xanax, Ambien, correct? To sleep. Would you sleep well knowing you'd shared a bed with a killer? You claim my client poisoned your father, but the autopsy showed heart failure. Because Marcus knew exactly how to mimic it. Digitalis in small doses over time causes heart failure that looks natural. He researched it extensively. The FBI found his search history. Walsh changed tactics. You secretly recorded my client. Isn't that entrapment? It's not entrapment when a private citizen records evidence of a crime. You pretended to be drunk to manipulate him into confessing. I gave him the opportunity to tell the truth. He chose to brag about murder instead. The forensic evidence was damning. The FBI's Financial Crimes Unit presented a maze of transactions, shell companies, and offshore accounts. Marcus had stolen $43 million over 2 years, funneling it through 17 different countries. Agent Sarah Collins testified about her undercover work. Mr. Whitmore was paranoid but arrogant. He believed no one was smart enough to catch him. He kept detailed records of everything, including his father's involvement. Objection, Walsh shouted. Senator Whitmore isn't on trial here. Sustained, but the damage was done. Everyone knew David Whitmore was next. On the 4th day, Marcus took the stand in his own defense. It was a catastrophic mistake. Mr. Whitmore, his attorney began softly, tell us about your marriage to Victoria. I loved her, Marcus said, attempting sincerity. Despite what she claims, I loved her. But she changed after her father died, became paranoid, aggressive, delusional. Did you poison Richard Sterling? Absolutely not. Richard was like a father to me. The prosecutor's cross-examination was surgical. Mr. Whitmore, you say you loved your wife? Yes. Is that why you had an affair with Sarah Collins? That was a mistake. Is that why you created a deepfake pornographic video of her? I didn't. We have the metadata, Mr. Whitmore, created on your computer using software you purchased. Marcus's jaw clenched. You say Richard Sterling was like a father to you. Do you usually poison your father figures? Objection. Withdrawn. Mr. Whitmore, can you explain why you searched undetectable poisons 437 times in the 6 months before Richard's death? Research for a novel I was writing. Where's this novel? Silence. Can you explain why you purchased Digitalis online using a fake identity? I didn't. We have the receipts, Mr. Whitmore. IP address traced to your home computer. Marcus started to sweat. One final question. If you loved your wife, why did you tell your father, and I quote, Victoria is just a means to an end. Once I have control of Sterling's empire, I'll discard her like the trash she is. The prosecutor played the prison phone recording. Marcus's voice filled the courtroom, venomous and clear. The jury deliberated for exactly 3 hours and 47 minutes. Guilty on all counts. As the verdict was read, Marcus finally looked at me. Not with hatred or anger, but with something worse. Acknowledgement. For one moment, the mask completely dropped, and I saw the void where his soul should have been. Sentencing is scheduled for next month, the judge announced. Mr. Whitmore will remain in custody. As they led him away, Marcus called out, Victoria! I turned. Your father knew, he said. He knew everything and let it happen. Ask yourself, wait. Then he was gone, and I was left with one more ghost to confront. After the trial, I found myself in my father's study at 3 a.m, surrounded by his journals. Marcus's final words haunted me. He knew everything and let it happen. The journals went back decades, meticulous records of business deals, personal thoughts, and in the final volume, suspicions about Marcus. Entry dated 6 months before his death. Marcus is poisoning me. The tea, the medication adjustments, it's all deliberate. I've had James run tests, digitalis in small doses. Clever boy. His father taught him well. My hands shook. He knew, my father knew and did nothing. Entry dated 5 months before his death. I could stop this. One word to the police. But Victoria needs to see who she married. She needs to find her own strength. I won't always be here to protect her. This is my final lesson. I threw the journal across the room, rage burning through me. He let himself be murdered to teach me a lesson? Entry dated 1 month before his death. The poison has done too much damage. Even if I stopped Marcus now, I have perhaps 3 months left. Better to use this time wisely. I've set everything in motion. The will, the evidence, the recordings. Victoria will have everything she needs when she's ready to fight. To my daughter, if you're reading this, I'm sorry. A parent's job is to prepare their child for the world, not protect them from it forever. Marcus would have destroyed you eventually, with or without me. This way you destroy him instead. You become who you were meant to be. I know you'll hate me for this choice, but someday I hope you'll understand. The Sterling legacy isn't the money or the foundation. It's the strength to face evil and win. All my love, Dad. P.S. Check the basement safe. Combination. Your mother's birthday. I sat in that study until dawn, cycling through grief, rage, and finally, a strange understanding. My father had orchestrated his own death like everything else in his life, strategically, purposefully, with the long game in mind. The basement safe contained 3 things: a letter to me, $50 million in bearer bonds, and a USB drive labeled "in case of emergency." The letter was brief. Victoria, if you're reading this, you've won. Marcus is destroyed, David is exposed, and you've discovered your own power. The bonds are yours alone, untraceable, untouchable. Your freedom fund. The USB contains information about David's other crimes, including 3 murders he ordered in the 90s. Use it if necessary. Remember, Sterlings don't just survive. We prevail, Dad. I plugged in the USB. The files were extensive. Photographs, documents, audio recordings. David Whitmore wasn't just corrupt. He was a serial killer who used his Senate position to hide bodies and silence witnesses. But there was more. A folder labeled Patricia Coleman. Inside were documents showing Patricia had taken bribes early in her career, before she became a judge. Nothing related to our case, but enough to destroy her reputation. My father had known this and kept it hidden, protecting his friend while maintaining leverage. I realized then that my father wasn't the hero I'd thought he was. He was a pragmatist who collected secrets like weapons, who manipulated even those he loved. The only difference between him and David Whitmore was that my father's cruelty had purpose beyond revenge. Elena found me there at noon, still staring at the screens. Victoria, you missed the meeting with the foundation board. Did you know my father was a monster too? I asked. She sat beside me, reading the files. Jesus, this is comprehensive. He destroyed people, Elena. Maybe not with poison, but with information, manipulation, strategic cruelty. He also built hospitals, funded scholarships, saved thousands of lives through the foundation. Does that make it okay? Elena was quiet for a moment. No, but it makes it complicated. Good people can do bad things. Bad people can do good things. Most of us live in the gray. Marcus was right about one thing, I said. The Sterling fortune was built on destruction, just more elegant destruction than his. So what are you going to do? I thought about Jason, about the next generation, about the cycles of revenge and cruelty that had destroyed 2 families. I'm going to break the cycle. The next day, I met with Patricia Coleman in her chambers. I know about the bribes, I said simply. Her face went pale. Your father promised. My father's dead, but I'm not him. I placed the USB on her desk. This is the only copy. Destroy it. Retire from the bench. Find peace. Why? She asked. You could own me with this. Because owning people is what my father did. What Marcus did. I want to be different. Patricia took the USB with shaking hands. Your father would be proud. No, I said, he'd be disappointed. And that's how I know I'm making the right choice. Marcus Whitmore was sentenced to life without parole on a rainy Tuesday that reminded me of my father's funeral. David Whitmore got 25 years for conspiracy and obstruction of justice. The courtroom was packed, but I sat alone in the back row, needing to see it end. Marcus didn't look at me during sentencing. He'd aged a decade in 6 months, his hair gray at the temples, his confident swagger replaced by hollow defeat. When the judge read the sentence, he simply nodded, as if he'd been expecting it all along. Mr. Whitmore, the judge said, do you have anything to say? Marcus stood slowly. I was raised on revenge, fed it like mother's milk. Every birthday, my father would tell me about what the Sterlings stole from us. Every Christmas was a reminder of what we'd lost. I thought destroying them would heal something in me. Instead, it destroyed everything I touched. He paused, finally looking at me. Victoria, I won't ask for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But know this, in another life, with another father, I might have actually loved you. Then he was gone, led away in shackles to serve a sentence that would outlive him. David Whitmore's sentencing was different. He ranted and raved, blamed everyone but himself, and had to be physically removed from the courtroom. The man who'd spent 40 years plotting revenge couldn't accept that he'd been defeated by the daughter of his enemy. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited with their usual questions, but I walked past them. There was nothing left to say that hadn't been said in court. That evening, I called a meeting at the Sterling Foundation. The board of directors, some of whom had tried to oust me during Marcus's campaign, sat nervously around the conference table. Effective immediately, I announced, we're restructuring. 50% of the foundation's assets will be liquidated and donated directly to victims of domestic abuse and financial fraud. No more galas, no more networking events, just direct action. Victoria, one of the older board members, protested, your father built this foundation. On blood and secrets, I finished. I found his journals. I know how he operated. The Sterling name meant power to him, but it's going to mean something different moving forward. You're destroying your father's legacy. I'm transforming it. Over the next 6 months, I systematically dismantled the empire my father had built. The foundation was restructured into a lean, efficient organization that provided legal aid and safe housing to abuse victims. No more prestigious buildings with our name on them. No more black tie fundraisers where rich people congratulated themselves for caring. Jason thrived once the shadow of Marcus lifted. He graduated valedictorian, his speech about resilience and redemption bringing the audience to tears. When Harvard accepted him early admission, he chose to study social work instead of law. I don't want to prosecute people, Aunt Vic, he explained. I want to help them before they become people who need prosecuting. Elena and I launched our own venture, a forensic accounting firm that specialized in uncovering financial abuse in divorce cases. We worked pro bono for those who couldn't afford it, funded by the bearer bonds my father had hidden. You know what the irony is? Elena said one evening as we reviewed cases. You're using your father's dirty money to clean up other people's messes. Poetic justice, I agreed. Sarah Collins, Agent Collins, visited me a year after the trial. She was still with the FBI, but had been promoted to heading the Financial Crimes Division. I wanted to apologize, she said over coffee, for the deception, for that night in your bedroom. You were doing your job. I was, but it doesn't mean it was easy. Watching you suffer, knowing I could have ended it sooner if I'd broken cover. Would Marcus have been convicted if you had? She shook her head. We needed him to feel safe enough to make mistakes. Your divorce proceedings were the perfect catalyst. Then you did the right thing. Did I? Sometimes the right thing and the cruel thing are the same thing. It was something my father would have said, and I told her so. Your father, Sarah said carefully, was a complicated man, but you're not him, Victoria. You broke the cycle. Did I? I manipulated Marcus into confessing. I used his arrogance against him. I destroyed him as thoroughly as he tried to destroy me. The difference is you stopped the affair. You didn't go after his friends, his extended family, everyone who ever helped him. You could have. With the information you have, you could have brought down half of Wall Street. She was right. The files my father left contained enough ammunition to destroy dozens of lives. But I'd burn them all. except for one, a recording I kept as insurance just in case. 3 years after the trial, I received a letter from federal prison. Marcus's handwriting was still perfect, controlled even behind bars. Victoria, I won't waste your time with apologies or explanations. You know what I did and why. But I wanted you to know that I think about that first night we met at your father's gala. Before I knew who you really were, before the plan took hold completely, there was a moment when I looked at you laughing at something your friend said, and I thought maybe I could let this go. Maybe I could choose her over revenge. I chose wrong. Your father visited me once 2 weeks before he died. He knew everything, the poison, the theft, all of it. He said something I didn't understand then. You're going to destroy my daughter, and she's going to destroy you back. But she'll survive it. She'll become something neither of us could be. Ahala Sulebiyo. Someone who chooses light over darkness. He was right. Don't respond to this letter. Don't visit. Let me disappear into the nothing I deserve. But know that in the ruins of what I was, there's something almost like remorse, almost like humanity. Marcus, I read the letter twice, then burned it. Some ghosts deserve to stay buried. The Sterling Foundation's headquarters, that gleaming tower my father had built, was sold to a nonprofit that turned it into affordable housing. I kept one room, his old office, and converted it into a meditation space. Sometimes I sat there, surrounded by empty shelves where his journals once lived, and tried to make peace with the man he was versus the father I needed him to be. My mother, deep in dementia at her care facility, sometimes recognized me, sometimes didn't. On good days, she'd tell stories about young Richard Sterling, the idealistic boy who wanted to change the world before the world changed him. He loved you more than anything, she'd say, holding my hand with her paper-thin fingers. More than money, more than power, more than revenge. You were his redemption. I was his weapon, I corrected gently. Can't you be both? Maybe she was right. Maybe we're all both, weapons and redemption, destroyers and creators, children of our parents and architects of our own souls. 5 years after Marcus's conviction, I stood in front of a congressional committee testifying about financial abuse in marriage. The room was packed with advocates, survivors, and skeptics. Senator Matthews, I addressed the chairman, 1 in 4 women will experience severe intimate partner violence in their lifetime. Financial abuse occurs in 99% of domestic violence cases. Yet we have no federal laws specifically addressing financial manipulation in marriage. Mrs. Sterling, your case was exceptional. Your husband was a murderer. My husband was exceptional only in that he got caught. There are thousands of Marcus Whitmores out there slowly poisoning their spouse's finances, if not their bodies. The Sterling Foundation has documented over 3,000 cases in the past 2 years alone. And what do you propose? The Financial Freedom Act, mandatory financial disclosure in divorce proceedings, protected status for financial abuse victims, federal funding for forensic accounting in domestic cases. This would cost billions. Less than we spend on corporate tax breaks for men like my ex-husband. The committee grumbled, but I saw nods from several members. Change happened slowly, then all at once. After the hearing, a young woman approached me. She looked tired, scared, familiar in the way all abuse victims look familiar, like ghosts of who they used to be. Mrs. Sterling, I'm Emma. I think my husband is doing to me what yours did to you, taking control of everything, isolating me, making me doubt my own sanity. But I don't have evidence. I don't have money for lawyers. I don't have a father who left me protection. I gave her my card. You have something better. You have people who've been there before. Call this number. We'll help. She cried then, and I held her in the corridor of the Capitol building, while senators and lobbyists walked past oblivious to one more woman breaking and rebuilding herself in real time. This was my father's true legacy. Not the money or the power, but the understanding that strength comes from surviving the unsurvivable. He was wrong to let himself die for a lesson, wrong to manipulate even in death. But he was right about one thing. I had to save myself to truly be saved. Jason graduated from Harvard with honors and immediately went to work in the Bronx, helping kids who'd been caught up in the system. He met a girl, Maya, who challenged him and cherished him in equal measure. When they married, I walked him down the aisle, both of us crying for the parents who couldn't be there. You know what I realized? He said at the reception. Uncle Marcus tried to destroy me to get to you, but instead, he gave me purpose. Every kid I help, every family I keep together, it's like undoing a little bit of what he did. Elena found love with a detective she met through our work, a good man who understood that she'd never stop being my protector, my sister in everything but blood. Their wedding was small, perfect, free of the performance that had defined my own. You know what the difference is between your wedding and mine? I toasted. Elena actually knows who she's marrying. The crowd laughed, but it was true. We can never really know another person completely, but we can choose to see them clearly, without the filters of fantasy or revenge. Patricia Coleman retired quietly, disappearing to a beach town in Florida. She sent me a postcard once. Thank you for letting me leave with dignity. Your father never would have. She was right. My father collected people like chess pieces, moving them around his board until they served their purpose. I was trying to learn a different game, one where everyone could win, or at least survive with their souls intact. 10 years after the trial, I received word that Marcus had died in prison. Heart attack, the report said. Natural causes. The irony wasn't lost on me, the poisoner dying of the very thing he'd mimicked in my father. I didn't attend the funeral, but I sent flowers. White roses, which in another life had been my favorite, before they decorated my father's funeral, before Marcus turned beauty into grief. David Whitmore died 2 years later, alone, unmourned, his legacy a cautionary tale about the cost of revenge. And me? I lived. I lived in the small moments. Jason's college graduation, Elena's first child learning to walk, the hundreds of women we helped escape their own Marcus Whitmores. I lived in the quiet victory of breaking generational cycles, of choosing creation over destruction. Sometimes late at night, I stood on the balcony of my apartment, not the penthouse Marcus had wanted, but a modest place that felt like home. The city sprawled below, millions of stories unfolding, each with their own heroes and villains, victims and survivors. I thought about my father's final lesson, written in his journal. Sterlings don't just survive, we prevail. He was wrong about that too. Surviving was enough. Surviving with grace, with purpose, with the determination to help others survive. That was prevailing. My phone rang. Another woman needing help, another Marcus to expose, another cycle to break. Sterling Foundation, I answered. How can we help you? Because that's what we did now. We helped. We healed. We chose light over darkness, even when the darkness knew our name, especially when it wore our face in the mirror. My father had taught me to play chess, to think 10 moves ahead, to sacrifice pieces for the greater victory. But life wasn't chess. It was messier, harder, more beautiful than any game. Marcus had signed those divorce papers with mockery in his heart, thinking he was ending my story. Instead, he was beginning it. Every signature, every cruel word, every calculated destruction had forged me into someone neither my father nor Marcus could have imagined. Someone who understood power but chose compassion, who knew revenge but chose justice, who inherited an empire built on secrets but rebuilt it on truth. The city lights twinkled below, each one a life, a story, a chance for redemption or revenge. I chose redemption. Every day, in small ways and large, I chose to be better than the men who tried to define me. My name is Victoria Sterling. I am not my father's daughter or my ex-husband's victim. I am not the sum of what was done to me or the product of generational trauma. I am the break in the cycle. I am the hand reaching back to pull others through. I am proof that sometimes the best revenge is no revenge at all. Just a life well lived, purposefully chosen, relentlessly kind in the face of cruelty. My father's will had revealed his final manipulation, but my will, my own will, revealed my final transformation. From victim to survivor, from survivor to thriver, from thriver to healer. The Sterling legacy would live on, not in buildings or bank accounts, but in every woman who found her strength, every child who broke free from their parents' poison, every survivor who chose healing over hurting. Marcus thought he was signing my defeat that day in court. Instead, he signed my liberation. And that signature, mocking and cruel as it was, became the first letter of my new beginning.